Sometimes when you say the word white supremacy, people, and particularly those that identify as white, backs will kind of go up and you'll kind of get that amygdala hijacked where you just kind of freeze and not really want to, understand what white supremacy is. So white supremacy, yes, is an ideology where, whiteness is elevated as best and more superior above all other races, in particular people that are brown and people that are black. But white supremacy is also something that is just part of the society that we live in, because it's the very foundation through which we get all of our ideas around race and around racism and around difference and otherness. So when we think about white supremacy, yeah, we can think about it in terms of it being those big, overt forms in terms of the KKK or the Proud Boys or the Heritage Front or any other form of white supremacist organization. But white supremacy as an ideology is something that we just are constantly surrounded by at all times. So if we think about it in terms of Band-Aids even, just now they're starting to have Band-Aids that match my skin color, right? That's an example of how, whiteness has been kind of rendered normal and the average. And it becomes the bar through which everything is either measured, taken away, or added to. So when we think about white supremacy, we have to kind of look at it from that lens, not just in terms of, yes, those big overt forms of white supremacy that we're familiar with, but also in thinking about it in terms of how whiteness operates in our society and how it's elevated above all others. When we think about some of the more covert forms of anti-Black racism, that really falls along the realm of the denial of racism. Number one, it doesn't exist now, or it existed a really long time ago, and it doesn't really apply to current context of anything. That's an example. And microaggressions, I think that's a term that has kind of become more popularized over the past few years. And microaggressions basically are those unintentional or intentional slights or insults, those little jabs that people receive. And sometimes the people that are on the receiving end of them are people who are also friends and colleagues that goes between each other, right? When we think about, a classic example of a microaggression, it could be something as simple as where you're from. Right? Being asked, where are you from? If you see somebody who's Black and or racialized and it's displacing them, right? So by instantly seeing someone saying, hey, where are you from? And then when people say, well, I'm from Toronto, for example, and then, people continue to push and say, but where are you really from? But then you have to think about it in terms of, what that could mean for a youth who, say, is successful in academics and, they're made to feel like they couldn't possibly be successful. Who helped them along, right? If somebody gets into a program that is really difficult to get into, who helped you? How did you get into that program, right? How are you here? These are all microaggressions, and what they do is they actually cause a great deal of harm, right? And make people question their own value, their own worth. And then we have issues of internalized oppression, right? So people are always hearing these negative things, always being questioned and displaced. And they start to believe these things to be true. They no longer question it, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. In order for the status quo to be maintained, which is, the way things are, the way things operate, one thing that we do see, white fragility is an example of how the status quo gets maintained. So when white folks are, forced to discuss conversations around race and racism, they'll have reactions. It could be denial, it could be anger, it could be silence, it could be rage. It could be a number of things, but all it basically does is it serves to stop the conversation from happening. And what it does is then maintains the status quo. It doesn't allow for change. It doesn't allow for innovation. It doesn't allow to really have that deep introspective reflection that is so integral to any conversations around race and racism. To dismantling oppression, you need to be able to first look inward. And then, look outward essentially and see where, you can make the changes that are necessary.